Hello and welcome to Nutrient Nirvana. As always, I'm your host Paul, and today I'm super excited to be joined by Peter Aziz, a shaman, magician, and healer from the UK now living in Thailand. Peter has spent his whole life training in shamanism, healing, yoga, magic, and metaphysics, and learning from the Faerie kingdom. Peter offers online and home study courses, monthly live workshops, and Q&A calls on healing, magic, and shamanism, where Peter initiates his students into these powerful traditions. Now, I first came across Peter in a fantastic documentary called The Fairy Faith, which I think is still online. So if you can watch that, it's highly recommended. And I've followed his work ever since. I find his information always fascinating and it always resonates very deeply in me. So, hello, Peter. How are you today? How's life in Thailand?
All very good. It's very hot here at the moment.
Brilliant, lovely. Glad to hear it. It's pretty cold here in England. We've just come into May, but it's raining, pretty cold. So I wish I was in Thailand with you, mate.
A bit of rain today. You can probably hear the frogs in the background.
Oh, lovely. Nice. So, can you give us a brief biography on how you got started on your amazing journey?
Well, I started it when I was about 8 years old, actually. It was my grandmother on my mother's side who introduced me. She basically took me out and taught me how to connect with the fairies. That's where it began. I was around at the time. It wasn't until about 19 later on at university that I actually then started connecting other ways, because there was this mind, body, spirit festivals in London. I went to Lowe's, and that's when I started learning various things. So I was doing physics at university. Then I got into healing. I then travelled. I went first to New Mexico, where I learned from Pueblo Indians. I've travelled to Hawaii, where I learned with kahunas. To Peru, where I wrote the ayahuasca arrows. And Haiti, where I trained in voodoo. In India, Indonesia. And it's basically the last 20 years I've been training mostly in Indonesian magic.
Wow! So you're very much well travelled, and no doubt you've picked up a lot of different magic skills from various parts of the world. So that's very
Yes,
very
various.
interesting.
Yeah,
Yeah,
always looking for
fantastic.
something that works a bit better.
Yeah. So one of the main reasons why I asked you on today is because I've always been very interested in the fairy folk. This is because when I was very, very young, probably around the ages of 3, 4, 5, I believe I used to see them regularly
Mm.
usually in my bedroom or in the upstairs of my house. And it was either one guy that used to walk around, he wore a leather apron, had a cap on, was very tanned, almost to the point of looking quite dirty. And then there were these women that looked like they were from the medieval times in a way. They had like cone shaped hats with veils, and
Mm-hmm.
they weren't particularly nice to me. I have to be honest. They used to encircle me and kind of prod and push me about and stuff, and I was never particularly comfortable when they were around. But I've thought about this a lot over the last few years, and thought to myself, did I imagine all this, or was it a real experience? So, what do what do you make? Sorry to put you on the spot, but what do you make of that? Does that sort of resonate with you? Do you?
That could well be real. You see, the fairies haven't direct technology the way we have. They do it in magic instead. So they do look very medieval. Now, not all fairies like people. If your house has been built in one of their portals without, because people didn't know what they're doing, and they put right in the middle of a fairy spot, they're going to be a bit troubled by you and don't like you being there. So they're going to be a bit pissed off with you, basically. So that can
Right.
happen. If you build a house on a fairy portal where they should have been left to fairies in the old ways, then they don't like it. You're kind of in their territory, as it were, and messed up their space.
Okay, that's interesting. I often wondered if they were, because the house I lived in at that time was at least 200 years old. So I
Right.
did wonder if they were connected to that house at all. But when I moved from there when I was about 7 years old. After that, I had no experiences.
Right. So it's probably all that house, yeah.
Yeah, probably. Okay, thanks for that. So, with regards to the fairy faith, who are they? What are they? are they physical beings, or do they live, or do they reside within the human imagination?
Well, they're physically in their world. They see us as the ghosts. You see, everything is illusion. We make our world real. They make their world real. They share the world with us, but in a different dimension.
Right.
To us, they're like spirits. We don't see them. The same way, some of them won't see us. We're not part of the reality. They're the ghosts. We are the ghosts to them. They even have like human tales, and some fairies don't even believe in humans. So they share the world with us, but in a different dimension.
Okay, that makes sense.
Now,
Yeah.
where they come in is basically live in what we call the spirit of nature. You see, before this world is created, we come to the elemental kingdom. You know, out of the first source, you create the elements first in the ethers, and then that creates a physical world. It's an in consciousness, so obviously it comes here, it becomes human. If you stop someone on the way, it becomes a different being. Like if it's in the elemental kingdom, it can become a sylph, a salamander, an undine, or a gnome. Now, the spirit of nature is actually not on the etheric level, not in the elemental, it's actually parallel to our world. It gives life to everything. So this kind of spirit of nature penetrates our world and gives it life. And that's another world in itself. If the same consciousness descends into that world, it becomes a fairy. The only difference between them and us is where they've ended up. Naturally, their boundaries change according to where they live.
Wow. Okay. So was it your mother or your grandmother that taught you how to see?
My grandmother.
Your grandmother. Okay.
My grandmother was kind of Hungarian witch.
Yes, I've read that. That's very, very interesting. So how did she teach you to see these little people?
She just took me out and showed me. Basically, when you're a child, it's like you can be shown things and you're open, you begin to pick it up, you just need pointing out to you. Because they're there, they're subtle. You don't see them at first. Once you start tuning in and looking for them, they appear.
Right.
You
Okay.
see certain places in nature where they tend to be more prevalent. In really wild spots, you know, the elemental energy is high. It becomes easy to see them.
Okay. That's very interesting. I've really wanted, obviously, to experience seeing them again. And I was told by a lady on this channel who's a psychic and astrologer that the key to doing this would be to engage in shadow work with myself. Maybe as we get older, you know, real life overtakes us, and we become absorbed in our work and everyday life, and those experiences vanish. But she said that there might be a way of getting back to that way of seeing these people if I engage in some shadow work. Would you agree with that?
You see, it's not that we're in the real world, we're caught in the illusion, we're hypnotized in the world we're in. Constantly being fed the same information keeps us trapped here. You don't see reality anymore. If you go into nature and just leave this behind for a while, you start to open up again. It's what the vision quests are about. If you simply take time out of society, away from all the usual human trappings, and spend time in nature, you naturally open. You can open again, your mind opens up and you start seeing things. There's certain things you can do to make it easier as well. There are herbs which open up your vision. I'm not talking about psychedelics, even simple things like mugwort, loosestrife, and chicory was a kind of combination which helps open you. Works very well after fasting. Also, if you do it under the full moon, you're more open. Another little trick was to actually have those little Tibetan butter lamps. When you burn butter, it seems to activate them spirits more and it becomes more visible. So go under a tree under a full moon, burn a butter lamp and open up there, and it becomes much easier.
I'm going to try that. Thanks for that bit of advice. That's brilliant. Okay. Yeah. So moving on from the fairies, just for a moment, I've seen you talk before many times about sacred sites and monuments, places, for example, like Glastonbury Tor. And I have a great affinity with Glastonbury. I only actually went there for the first time last year, but it was an amazing experience. I found the place to be full of energy, and not just good energy. I think it was a mixture of kind of light and dark energy at Glastonbury, and it was tangible. So, as I understand it, you see the Glastonbury Tor as the Temple of the Sun, and it actually was constructed in Atlantis, or the times of Atlantis. Is that true?
Yes.
Wow, that's incredible. And you believe that the Tor is where all these various ley lines connect to each other. Is that correct?
There are a number of ley lines meeting, but particularly the Dragon Line, which goes right across the country, that goes right through Glastonbury Tor.
Right. Okay. Is that
And
the
also,
same lane?
also an important point, which is actually right next to it. But Chalice-Well is one of the places you get vision easily. This was actually where I first scried in the well and got the symbols of the Atlantean temples. See, this is part of the old Atlantean knowledge. If you use the symbols of the temple on any of these sacred spots, it opens up visions of those particular places, and all these old visions or the teachings of the temples flows. I found Chalice-Well a great place to do that. Using these temple symbols on that well, you begin to actually go off into their world and see what they were doing.
Wow, that's amazing. Okay, and you've talked about dragons that are sacred guardians to these temples. Could you elaborate on that? What do you mean by dragons?
Dragons are a very large earth spirit, basically. They're very high level. They exist in the ethers and even beyond, in the what we call the liminal, in between everything. So it's a very powerful energy because it's like they almost keep reality together. They almost like guard the kind of manifestation of energy from one plane to the next.
Right.
Therefore, they keep the energy of the earth healthy. So all the ley lines often have dragons in the crossing points, in particular the node points of ley lines. You'll have dragons there almost like keeping the energy, keeping it healthy, keeping it disturbed, and they're not polluting. That's when earthly energy can get really negative.
Okay, that's very, very interesting. So, I believe that you were doing some shaman work at Glastonbury a few years back, and you were trying, as I understand it, these dragons had been asleep for quite a while, and during that time, the energy had become contaminated.
Yeah.
And so, what exactly were you doing in Glastonbury with that, and how did you go about it?
There's spells, and all of them in the old Cornish language you used to raise the dragon's breath. And so I find these spirits, find their name, and then do some chanting and wake it up. Sometimes plunging crystals in the ley line to help the energy, and when they wake up, the energy changes.
Right. Okay. And that was, I believe, you were using Herkimer
Yes.
diamond crystals.
Yes.
Okay, and that's because I think they can only have positive energy. These
Right. So
crystals,
what's
is
the
that right?
negative? So if you put it anywhere negative, or they can't hold negative energy, eventually the crystal has to win because negative energy can't exist in them. So they're very good
Yeah.
for actually this cleansing work.
Brilliant. Okay. Okay. Just pause there for one moment. So just going back to the tour, Peter. My personal experience, the first time I visited the tour, I just walked through the gates as you do, and you can see the church at the top and stuff. And
Yep.
I was about to walk up the man-made path up to the top of the tour, and there was no voice. I just had a sudden strong feeling that I shouldn't walk that way, and instead I decided to walk around
Right.
the
On the
tour.
maze.
Yeah, and I left my wife doing that. She wasn't very impressed because she had to walk up the path on her own. But I just had this very, very strong feeling that this was not the way to do it. And so I walked around the tour and got to the top that way. And when I got to the top, the sun was going down. It was a beautiful day. And I looked out and I saw what I thought were several other large constructions in the area. And I don't know if I dreamed that at the time, but that's what I saw anyway. So what was do you think, is there any relevance to that at all? Do you think that something was telling me to walk around?
Well, yes, I did the same thing when I was first there, probably about maybe 40 years ago. It is like a labyrinth around. If you look at the actual way those actually layers form, there's like 7 turns which goes around outside and inside again. Is that the same pattern as some of the Greek labyrinths? The old labyrinth pattern, exactly how it forms in those layers around the tour. This is like a labyrinth. You follow that pattern, it's like an initiatory path which takes you to the top.
Yeah, yeah. And I think I'm right in saying that if you walk around in that way, it unlocks certain codes in your brain. Is that correct?
Yes, it unlocks all 7 chakras. That's why there's 7 turns to it.
Right. Okay. That's amazing. Now, So my first experience of climbing the Tor was a fantastic one. It was a very, very spiritual experience for me. The following day, I went up the Tor, but I walked up the path, and I got halfway up, and I felt absolutely awful. I just it was I explained how I felt to somebody, and they said, "Oh, that sounds like vertigo." But I don't think it was, and it stayed with me, this feeling, for about 2 days afterwards. When I drove back from Glastonbury, I stopped at Avebury, and I love Avebury to bits, but I didn't enjoy the experience because I was still feeling very, very uneasy, out of sync, completely unbalanced, and I just wonder if that was I don't know, just the energy of the Tour that day, or
Well, because you walk that way, if you're sensitive, you actually feel the shifts. In walking around these 7 turns is actually preparing, gradually shifting from one state to another. If you cut across too quickly, it's almost like you're shifting to a different, like, energy vibration too fast. That's what kind of knocks you off balance a bit.
Yeah, that would explain it.
Not allowing yourself time to adjust.
Okay, that makes perfect sense. Thanks. I thought I was going mad, but yeah, brilliant. Okay, thanks for that. Just moving on. What's your opinion about the actual the structure of the Tour? Is it a man-made pyramid? Many people think that it's a natural hill that's been built on and developed by Neolithic people. My gut feeling, my instinct tells me that it was a man-made structure, and if you look at it from the sky, it definitely looks man-made to me. So what are your thoughts on that?
There are a few hills around England which are similar in this way. They're very tall hills, and they're believed to be Atlantean pyramids. After all this time, they're just covered in earth. They look just like hills. But actually, these are hollow. Glastonbury Tor is hollow. If you notice, if you walk around it, there's a manhole on one side. I knew somebody in Glastonbury had the key to that. People could actually get inside and do the magic in there. It is hollow. It's like an inner chamber that is. It looks like it's been built. Basically, this is an ancient temple.
I think I know where you're talking about, and that's very odd because when I climbed the Tour the second time and had a very negative experience, at one point you have to turn back on yourself, and they've cemented over an area that I was told was once you could see underneath it, and you could see where there was a tunnel. And it was at this moment when I had to turn back on myself and walk over that area that I suddenly became very disorientated and dizzy and stuff. So that would kind of add up as well.
Well, the patch over is going to disturb the energy.
Yeah.
It's the kind of thing that creates negative energies in the earth, and people mess up these sites this way.
Yeah. Did your friend elaborate at all on what they experienced inside the Tour?
Well, the druids used to meet there. Basically, it was like, I don't know if it still goes on, but there was a long-standing druid group there who had access to the Tor.
Right. Okay. I've also been told that there are black magicians that also get into the Tour. Yeah.
I don't think there's any more. But
Sorry?
I don't think you can get any more created over. They've probably blocked that. So yes, it used to be used for all kinds of. There's been plenty of black magic going on around. This is why it's to kind of raise the dragon and cleanse it.
Okay, yeah, there's some amazing stories, myths and legends about the place, and I believe that there's a story where 2 monks broke into the tunnels underneath the Tor, and when they came out, they both had to be certified and put into a mental asylum. They'd completely gone, crackers. So, there's, like I say, there's some amazing stories. I'd personally love to get underneath there and see what's underneath there, because I think there's a lot of our past that we could probably find out about if we got underneath there. Would you concur with that?
Yes, it is an ancient temple. It would store a lot of knowledge in there.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, let's move on. So, with something that you do with your clients, as I understand it, is shadow work. You help them with shadow work.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yes.
Okay, so it's something that I've been contemplating and looking into very recently. I've also got into tarot, and I've been told that it might be possible to engage with shadow work using the tarot. But what would for a beginner who wants to go on this journey, what would your advice be? How would one start to engage with your own shadow?
Well, I've deal with some of my courses, what we call the darkness course. If you look at my magic series, the third one is darkness. It covers all the dark side. A lot about dealing with the ego, the shadow, the nemesis, all the dark stuff we need to look at. So I give very clear instructions on that and how to deal with that, and actually have guided meditations for doing it. Because it is quite a bit complex. What you need to understand is that everything you deny, your shadow is going to hold for you. And that then starts coming from the outside. So a lot of the people around you who bring you problems are actually projecting your own shadow. So the first clue is to look at all the people around you, all the projections, what keeps coming back at you from other people, what's the common kind of qualities of those close to you, what is it you hate in people, and it's also what you admire. These are reflections of yourself, you see. That's the first place to start looking.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Now, particularly as over the last 15 years of my life, I've had, I suppose, for want of a better expression, I've had an awakening experience. So, in other words, I woke up to the way the world is for the about 15 years ago. Now, this has obviously put a lot of my relationships with people, family members, under quite a lot of pressure.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess that probably would come up at some point in my shadow work, I would have thought, because I remember when I woke up, my first feeling was of anger. I was angry that the world is the way it is because there are people at the very top of society. Some people would call them the parasite classes or whatever that obviously are, kind of running the world for their own benefit, and everyone else has to, suffer, etc. So, it's what I'm trying to say is how would I carry on my journey, where I'm trying to learn about things and engage with that side of things, and still maintain relationships with people that are not interested in that live well within the matrix, if you like, because so many people over the last 2 years have been red pilled, if you like, by the government, or woke up by this pandemic that's been rolled out.
Yep.
So what's the secret to maintaining relationships with people who just do not want to know how the world is, like some of us do?
You've got to remember, with all people, they don't all share the same interests. You have some common things and some things you don't talk about. Same with the people who haven't woken up. Okay, there's something you can talk to about, but you don't talk about this because they don't get it. So, they'll be like part-time friends in a way. You go to different people and talk about different things. So you don't make it too big. At first, when you wake up, and it's full of it, and you want to tell it to everybody. But the second thing to remember is that we then have to wake up our authority. Presence has to be balanced with authority, otherwise you go back to sleep. What happens? People wake up and see all this trouble and want to go back to sleep again because they don't think they can change it. This is where we learn that we create our own reality. If we know we're creating it, we can change it. So we have to actually know our authority. We create our reality. Then you start changing what you don't like. You change the thing.
Yeah. So you just mentioned co-creating together, I suppose, a better world. That's something that I've been engaging in for a few months now. But what would be your advice to people? How can people that are in our perceived reality, if you like, how can we come together to co-create a new earth? Because a lot of people, you see a lot of things where people are saying this is bad, we need to petition the government to make sure this doesn't happen. Personally, that's not for me. My feeling is that we need to kind of just turn our backs, non-compliance, civil disobedience, but we don't engage with them. Just try to move away and start building the world that we want to see.
Exactly. We can't expect them to do it for us, but they won't.
Yeah.
It's like this is part of the whole giving away of power. Even by voting, you're expecting somebody else to change the world for you. No, they won't. They keep running the same old way. We've got to stop relying on anybody else and actually just go back to creating a world we want. Do our visualization, everything else in our shadow work, everything else to make change. So we actually work on creating our reality, not expecting them to do it.
Right. Okay. So, and you think that visualization is a key part of this, yeah?
It's one of the common tools people use for kind of creating what they want. It works first personally, then gradually expands to use on a global scale.
Right. Okay. Okay. Just going back to shadow work. When you start on this journey of confronting your shadow, what's the best method for doing that? Is it meditation, or as I've mentioned, I'm quite keen on starting with the tarot. Could you give us some insights into how people go about actually beginning to engage with their shadow?
Well, I like to do it in stages. Part of it is kind of more psychological than the rest is the meditation, because you've got to actually engage with it somehow and talk with it.
Hmm.
So first of all, you look at your projections and reflections, all things of those around you that you hate and admire. You kind of imagine you're analysing all the qualities, both good and bad, and start looking at what's common to them both. You see, between the good and the bad, there's a raw power that can be used either way. Like, for instance, you might find you capable of extreme hate and extreme love. What's common is the intensity of your emotion. There's a power in that. That can go either way. Once we own that, we then realize we have a responsibility then to use it as we want to use it properly, rather than say this is good and this is bad and I can't do this one. The bit we deny is what keeps chasing us. See, if I know I'm capable of good and bad, but I choose to do good, it's more honest than trying to say I'm not capable of bad. That bit I'm denying is going to come back and bite me in the ass, basically. Right. So first, look at all these qualities that are bothering me in other people, and actually start listing them all, and actually trying to find what's common to the good and bad, to see what my raw power is. What I do then is go into meditation. You meet your shadow, which will be a reflection of all these people, somehow some of them all, and you engage with it. You start to own it. One common tool is take its mask off and put it on you, so you're owning those qualities in yourself, not putting it outside anymore. You speak with it. You almost have to agree on some kind of exchange of gifts with it to make peace. The first step is to make peace with your shadow, so it's not bothering you. It's doing what it should do and actually showing you how to be whole. So you basically engage in meditation this way, talk with it, exchange gifts, make peace.
That's wonderful. That's definitely the most coherent kind of explanation for what I've just asked I've ever heard. So that's brilliant. That's really helpful. Thank you for that. That makes a lot of sense. That's brilliant. Okay, we'll just pause there for 1 second. I'll just check my notes. That's all my questions gone already. We've done half an hour. So I thought we'd be able to go a bit longer than that, but that's all my questions answered. Brilliantly, thank you.
That's a start. We can always do more later if we come up with any more.
I would. I've just enrolled on the course, the free course you're offering. I'm going to start doing that tonight.
Right.
I know we haven't talked much about magic today, but that's something that is going to be on my radar from now on, and I'm going to be investigating that. So, and through yourself. So, maybe in a few weeks' time, we could maybe, once I've got going on that, I'm bound to have lots more questions.
Yep, sure.
So I'll definitely be in contact with you, and hopefully we can have another conversation.
Okay, sure.
But that's fantastic. Thank you so much, Peter, for joining me
You're
today. I've really enjoyed it. Please, everyone that's watching, please go and check out Peter's website, because it's absolutely fantastic. There's so much information on there, as well as all the courses that Peter is offering people. I'll link that all underneath the video today. So thank you for joining us, Peter. Very grateful to you.
welcome.
Cheers. Thanks for that, Peter. Goodbye.
Okay, bye then.